All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is Tim McDonald coming to you with another episode of Advocacy at Work. And today I am here with a very special guest, Allison Rosen. How are you doing, Allison?
I am very good. Thanks for having me.
Well, so glad you're able to join us today because I know your story is going to help a lot of people out that are in this because of your experience and everything. For those that don't know, I know Allison almost since I was diagnosed. I think we connected. So almost 5 years now. But Allison, why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about your connection with cancer and a little bit about what you do.
Sure. Yeah. So, first of all, really excited to be here and share. I am a 13-year, actually, this will be 14 years, 14-year early age onset colorectal cancer survivor. I was diagnosed at age 32 when I was experiencing symptoms that were unusual for me and a little bit of history. I had Crohn's disease growing up. So I was very aware of bowel habits, blood, all the sort of things. And I had been in remission for a few years at that point. So I was actually getting regular screening. And so I had been the happiest, healthiest, probably best shape of my life for at least a year and a half or so, and started experiencing symptoms that were unusual for me. And so I talked with my doctor, and she didn't seem too worried. And I went on a trip and bachelorette party and got very sick on that trip. And I came back and we scheduled a colonoscopy for a few months later. And then, this was 2012 and I was diagnosed with colorectal cancer. And I'm sure we'll go more into it, but even having education and awareness of, again, my bowel habits and different things, I was not necessarily aware that I was at higher risk for colorectal cancer. And I was not necessarily expecting waking up for my colonoscopy and hearing. I didn't hear that I had cancer, but I did hear that she found something unusual growing inside me, and she would let me know, but she didn't think it was cancer. And so at the time of my diagnosis, I was actually working in cancer research. So I worked in a cancer research lab for a long period of time. So again, like I had knowledge more than the average person of cancer. I mean, I was working in blood cancer. It's not colorectal, but a little bit about me. And, I'm sure we'll talk and could go more into my story and or advocacy, because I've been since then, during treatment, I went through my treatment, but then as soon as I was deemed cancer free, I started doing advocacy, and it just started as me wanting to meet someone else young like me, because I felt very alone during my treatment. And over the past 13 or so years, I've done research, policy, community, and sort of patient advocacy on many different levels, just to help myself at first, really find a community, and then it turned into being able to help others. And again, my goal has always been to help bridge the gap between healthcare workers, healthcare community, researchers, and the communities that they serve, because I've kind of have been here and here, and there's a lot that's been missing or is missing in between.
Yeah, you just gave me so many questions to ask you, and I don't know which one to go with first. But before I get into asking you how you define advocacy, I think it's important just for people listening who might not already be diagnosed. Do you mind sharing what some of the unusual symptoms that you had that brought you to your doctor, even though you had the Crohn's disease?
Yeah. Yeah.
That you did experience some symptoms from that, but what was it that brought you in for that colonoscopy and to talk to your doctor about getting that done?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that were weird and had never happened to me before is when I would eat, I would feel like I had food stuck inside me. And eventually I would go to the restroom, and eventually it was just so painful that I was like, I can't ignore this anymore. At first I thought maybe it was heartburn, indigestion, so many different things, but the pain and like literally the physical feeling of something stuck inside me. Originally they thought I had a obstruction. So they did an x-ray before I had that colonoscopy. They did an x-ray and they thought I had a blockage. So they were just like, okay, well, go home and drink something to help clear you out. So they called in magnesium citrate, over the counter at the pharmacy, drank that. really didn't get much relief, but was just like, okay, maybe if I just don't eat that much or eat soft, that will get better. Again, didn't get any better. So eventually, like my doctor was like, okay. I wasn't due for a colonoscopy for at least a few months. So if I had sort of waited and not had that colonoscopy when I did, they said that my tumor was about to break through the colon wall. And it would have been, I don't know if I'd be here right now. So I think the typical symptoms for colorectal cancer, but plus your body better than anybody else. So if you think something doesn't feel right with your bowel habits, with your eating habits, with any sort of pain, you should talk to your doctor. And that's really what I tell people, especially younger people, that no matter what age you are, if you have a colon, you're at risk. So again, talking to a doctor could save your life. Like I really do believed it saved mine.
I think that is such an important point about you knowing your body better than anybody else, even if they have a degree or, a diploma sitting over their desk and wear a white lab coat or something. You know yourself better than anybody else. And so it's important for you to get up and, pay attention, pay attention, and two, take action on it and talk to somebody and not just, I remember one of my first oncologists gave me the advice, always get a second, third, fourth, or 10th opinion, even at every step of your journey, even if it's me, and even if you go until you hear not what you want to hear, but what you believe.
Yeah.
With his words.
The same. I think the opinions can make such a huge difference because if my doctor hadn't necessarily listened, just like, oh, let's put it off, I might have put it off. And so I tell people when I was diagnosed, I got 3 different opinions. Like I'm in Houston, an amazing medical center, and I still got 3 opinions, and I got 3 different suggestions for surgeries, not necessarily oncology, different opinions, but surgical opinions were all different. And really like who you choose. I mean, this is after screening, but even with screening and even with having symptoms, who you choose can make a huge difference in your life. And if one doctor doesn't listen to you, go to the next. And if that one doesn't, find someone that will listen to you because you deserve that. And if a doctor doesn't respect that you want a second opinion, they're not a good doctor.
That's exactly what my advice is to so many people that bring this up is like, if your doctor doesn't want it, probably not the right doctor for you. So,
yeah.
I think this is a great segue into just how you define advocacy.
Yeah, I mean, I think just advocacy, there's so many different sort of definitions, but for me, it's support. It's using my voice, my story to help others. And that might be patients, survivors, that might be this overall community, or that might be healthcare providers. So I see advocacy as using my voice, my story to help others improve care. So advocating for, with, the community and the people that maybe don't know about anything, cancer prevention, and then the people that do. So it's a very complicated, it's not a complicated definition, but really you can be an advocate for one, you can do advocacy for yourself, you can do advocacy for others, or you can help support others that are doing advocacy.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I am currently writing a book, From Patient to Advocate is the title. And I do talk about, like, I kind of put it into 4 different buckets, but, between fundraising, awareness, legislative, and research, those 4 buckets. But I think you kind of crossed over almost all those so far in the conversation, maybe except for fundraising, but that's there. But I would definitely love to ask, because I know that you mentioned that you were a researcher for blood cancers before you got diagnosed. Were you involved in advocacy even before you became a patient?
No, I wasn't. So I was always a volunteer. So I have volunteering in my blood. So when I was younger, I volunteered at our local children's museum, and then I volunteered at the Houston Zoo, and then I've always volunteered. I learned that from my mom. She volunteered early on in life, and so I've always given back to my community. And I volunteered for my local college alumni association. But that's what I would sort of do as far as volunteer work. So when I got diagnosed, and again, I really fell into advocacy. When I got diagnosed, I wanted to meet other people like me. I went to an event here in Houston for young adults. Someone said, anyone interested in joining an AYA, Adolescent Young Adult Advisory Council? And I'm like, sure. And I really did it to meet others because I was really struggling mentally with my diagnosis and feeling lost in life and not having a community that understood what I did, because friends and family are amazing. But I know, and a lot of people are probably listening that are involved or want to get involved. It makes such a huge difference when you can talk to someone that just understands you. So I got involved in that council, and slowly but surely opportunities came my way. And I realized my story and my experience would help others. So I said yes, and I said yes to something else, and I said yes to something else. And that sort of pivoted to, doing what I could through that advisory council. And then I went to good old Google, and I wanted to meet other people. Again, it was helping me so much meeting other people that I said, Colon Cancer Organizations, Houston, Texas. And the Colon Cancer Coalition Get Your Rear and Gear race popped up, and everyone had asked me what they could do for me. And I was like, please, I don't need food. I can't eat any of that. As I was recovering, it was tough. So they had their Get Your Rear and Gear Houston race, and I went to it and brought, I think, 60 or so people of my friends and family together. And we walked, not the whole 5K because I was still in recovery, but part of it. And that sort of started my local colorectal cancer advocacy, along with telling my story. And it just, again, the more I tell people that are interested in starting advocacy to reach out where they were treated to start and see if they can volunteer there and share their experience. And then the more you share, the more they see that you're willing to be a part of a change or express your opinion, the more they'll ask you to do. And, MD Anderson, where I was treated, asked me, I think, to do a story about my ostomy, a story about, it sort of spiraled, and I never said no. And so that sort of led me to where I am now, involved in so many different amazing organizations that for me, each one does something different that I'm passionate about. And I've been lucky enough to be able to have the time to give after work to help all these groups locally, nationally, statewide, some global efforts. But ultimately, if someone asked me, and I think that for me, because I worked in research, I had a unique sort of background that people are looking for. Because even 13 years ago, advocates weren't necessarily a part of the conversation related to research as they are now. And so I would always be like, yeah, that's a great study, but, so having that background in research really helped me excel as an advocate, especially in research advocacy.
Yeah. And so I guess, and this is something that I talk about a lot too, because I don't have a science background or anything, and I'm still a research advocate. So if you were to just briefly describe like kind of what research advocacy looks like for you, what would that look like? Just so, anybody listening can understand what is involved instead of me just explaining it.
Yeah, no, I mean, a research advocacy, you don't have to have the knowledge like I did. I think it's really important that the patient experience, caregiver experience, survivor experience, all are a part of the conversation related to research. And there's people that work in a lab and do research, have never met a cancer patient or survivor. There are companies creating clinical trials that, you want to have the best clinical trial. You want to have the best research possible. And if you don't have an advocate, a patient, survivor, or caregiver to lend that voice, I don't think that sometimes the research might not hit the right target population. So research advocacy is really the advocacy community, patients, survivors, caregivers, lending their voice to people that are actively doing research so that we can help provide that patient centricity, the patient perspective to improve it, to help people with accrual of clinical trials, because we might review protocols and inclusion and exclusion criteria. But ultimately, again, you don't have to have any background in research. It's just, you know what you went through, you know what you are going through, and you know if they say you have to go and get your blood drawn every single day for 2 weeks and you don't live in that city, you can like provide that perspective to whoever is creating a trial and say, I don't think that will work because of cost, because of transportation, because of family, because of job. So I think everyone that's gone through some form of treatment, again, can lend their voice, lend their opinion, and change the trajectory of so much research to make it better so it can actually serve the community that it's intended to serve.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's so important for people to understand that are, either being treated or survivor or a caregiver that, there's nothing more you need to know than what you went through.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
I call everyone in the community that has gone through or is going through it a lived experience expert. Because that's what we, after our name, it should be LEE, lived experience expert. I think it should be, because we, we didn't get our PhD, but we're experts in our experience.
I might have to put that on my signature now. You just started a movement, Allison.
I mean, it should be there because literally we've graduated, or we're, again, graduated. It's people living with or have gone through, and we deserve as much of a degree of some sort for our experiences.
Yes. And one final point on the research advocacy that I just wanted to make too is that, and you kind of hinted at this, but I want to make it very clear for people that, if patients, caregivers, and survivors are not at that table during the research process, these decisions are being made for us, not with us.
Yeah.
Is the bottom line. And
about us, without us.
Yep. And as well as I do, and I'm not just talking about advocacy in the healthcare space, I'm talking about any product. When that happens, when they didn't talk and it wasn't somebody that has any knowledge about what's going on, because you're like, who came up with this crazy idea? And that's what research could be too. And that's what it was for so many years. It was somebody in a lab setting or in an office setting saying, this is what we should do for patients, without getting the patient perspective on it. And it was like a major shift just to get our voices involved in that conversation.
Yeah. And now a lot of times it's required to have a patient advocate as a part of a grant or when you're looking into trials. The last thing that I think, if you're interested in becoming a research advocate, you must insist on being a part of the process from the very beginning, because sometimes people will be like, oh, will you write me a letter? And you never hear anything again. And so we don't want to be like a checkbox. We want to be, again, a voice. We don't always speak up every single, it's not a thorn. It's, if anything, it's like a gold star. It's beneficial to everyone involved to have a patient advocate at the table, like you said. But again, from the very beginning till the very end.
No. And I know you do a lot of just sharing your story and helping other patients too, as a form of advocacy. And what does that look like? And I want to touch on a point that you brought up a couple times earlier, is you really got started in this because it helped you. So maybe if you could expand on that a little bit and then go into like some of these other forms of advocacy, that I think would be really helpful and interesting to learn and hear about.
Yeah, I mean, the beginning, the doctors, they take care of all the physical stuff, but the mental aspect of going through cancer at a younger age was huge and hard, and I felt, again, very alone. Everyone thought my mom was a patient when we would go to the clinic, and my parents were my caregivers. So my friends that were my age were getting married, having children, and I was going to bed at 8:30 because I didn't feel great. So for me, I was like trying to find support. I really was trying to figure out a way to meet other people because I thought it would help me. And it did. Like there's one-on-one support. I did everything. I went through Immerman's Angels, MD Anderson is something called My Cancer Connection. I asked everybody if I could be matched with someone to talk to. And so I started talking to these people and they helped me. And then I also saw different things and heard other things as I got involved in advocacy that were gaps that didn't exist. And so I helped with some policy related to fertility preservation in my state. Then I realized that coverage wasn't everyone wasn't getting coverage for their colonoscopies or their screening. And so I got involved in policy advocacy. Really, for me, advocacy was, where are the gaps and where can I share my story and my experience? Because my experience was not rainbows and butterflies. There were times that I choose not to remember, but I realized those times need to be shared. And so my journey to have my ostomy, I had 3 different surgeries. The last surgery was to make it permanent. In between that time, I went into sepsis 3 different times, had 4 open surgeries, have kidney issues. There's so many different things that I went through that, there weren't necessarily mistakes, but there was a knowledge that I didn't have, that if I had connected with others, or if I had known the questions to ask, or if I had not had fear, then I would have maybe not necessarily made other decisions, but I feel like knowledge is power. And so by sharing my story, it was therapeutic for me, again, because that mental health aspect was huge. There was not a young adult support group at MD Anderson at the time that I helped spark the idea. So we finally had a young adult support group, and I started going every single month that we met because I needed that. I met some of my best friends who are still my best friends through that support group. And I don't go to it anymore because I don't need the support that I needed back then, but it's still going and going strong. And so for me, it was telling my story when I felt like it wasn't told. I hadn't heard a story about an ostomy. I didn't know about United Ostomy Associations of America at first. I found them through telling my story. And so the more you tell your story, because your story as a patient, survivor, and caregiver is very, very complicated. You can talk about something that you didn't have, or you can talk about something that you did have that made such a huge impact. And so really, I've told my story related to sexual health. I've told my story related to fertility. I've told my story related to ostomies, and so many different ways that, again, helped me, and I think in return helped others.
Love it. Well, just as we kind of get to the end of recording here, I just wanted to, I forgot to do these for a few episodes, but they're kind of fun because I think they get people to know you on a different level. So I just have a lightning round of questions. They're just like 4 simple questions. Well, maybe not simple, but not too complex. That have nothing to do with cancer. Just to, that just name the first thing that comes to your head when I say these things. So, your favorite color?
Red.
Your favorite band or musician?
Oh, that's so hard. I mean, I love everybody. I 80s cover bands.
All right. And a place you've always wanted to visit and haven't yet?
Italy.
And what's one thing that most people don't know about you?
Ooh, I feel like because I'm from Texas, people would maybe think, but I love country western dancing and go almost every weekend if I can.
Awesome. Well, before we go, though, what I really want to know is if you're giving either a patient, caregiver, or survivor who's hasn't been involved in advocacy one piece of advice, what would that be?
Don't be shy about sharing your story. And don't think overnight that I think it takes time to figure out what part of advocacy you're interested in. I think for me, it didn't happen overnight. I told my story and it just kind of accidentally happened. But also, by sharing your story, even simply on social media, you can help one person. And I don't think people really understand the impact of sharing their story, be it in a newspaper, on a blog. One post could change the trajectory of anyone's life. So you don't really realize it, but I think as long as you're sharing in some way, if you're comfortable, one-on-one, via social media, via your friends and family, you're helping people, and you are an advocate. So I think that the power of advocacy is huge, and if you want to get involved, there are people like you and me that are happy to help support that. We've been doing it for a long time, and the more voices we have, the better.
Well, thank you, Allison. And if people want to connect with you, what's the best way that they can do that or find you online?
I mean, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on TikTok, and I'm on LinkedIn. So if you look up Allison Rosen and colorectal cancer, I have Googled myself once and it's a little embarrassing. But if you look me up, like all of those are public pages. So if you use social media, message me. I check my messages all the time, and I'm happy to connect. If it's a one-on-one phone call, if it's just a DM about advice. Again, I will talk to anybody about anything if they need help, and if I'm not the right person, I'm happy to direct people to the right people or to the right organization for them.
Well, thank you so much, Allison. I really appreciate you taking the time today. And thank you for listening. And we'll be back next Thursday with another episode of Advocacy at Work.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.